In better news for the Liberals, in worse news for the Liberals, we have the former Justice Minister David Lametti has officially resigned as Montreal Liberal MP. He will remove himself, I suppose, from his seat at the end of this month. It's just if we're reading down this National Post article here, the second paragraph, he says in his statement, Lametti said it was with some sadness that he is leaving his dream job, but said that his constituents would benefit from a change of voice and style after more than 8 years in the job. I mean, you don't say.
Has he already been appointed with some pork position, or is that in the moments ahead? I think he has been. But the thing that bugs me, and I'm not a lawyer, Tamara Ugolini, and maybe we should seek a legal opinion on this, he deleted his Twitter account, but that wasn't his personal account. That was his government account. That is government, or in other words, public property. I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think you're allowed to do that. And what was so, odious? What content does David Lametti, post the court decision, not want anyone to view right now?
That's just it. This comes a few days after the courts of Canada ruled that the invocation of the Emergencies Act, which was unprecedented, really wartime adjacent legislation, deployed on the peaceful trucker convoy that took to the nation's capital, Ottawa, in January and February 2022. And in response to that, Justin Trudeau, he cowered in hiding. I think he had COVID then for the third or fourth time, maybe after his third or fourth booster. But he refused to talk to the protesters who were really protesting the cross-border travel mandates and how it would affect truckers. But then as they saw the support as they drove across Canada, it really turned into a protest against all of the COVID mandates and the COVID regime in general that enforced these diktats, public health diktats, so heavily, and without that robust discussion and debate, those things that are important to a functioning democracy. And of course, because we don't have freedom of the press in this country either, you couldn't even speak truth to power and ask any questions about how this was all coming to fruition, because you simply, as David mentioned earlier, aren't allowed to go to press conferences or ask any of those impolite or controversial questions. Anyway,
those images, by the way, bring back such warm memories, even though that was the coldest Ottawa weather I've ever experienced. I was there for most of it. Alexa Lavoie and Lincoln Jay were there for all of it. Thank goodness, because that was history. But you know what? To fast forward to the decision of a couple of days ago, Tamara Ugolini, I truly believe the Liberals were shocked by this decision because that judge was a Liberal appointee, not under Trudeau, but under Chrétien. And they thought the fix was in. This is a Liberal-friendly judge, although I understand he's very well respected in Ottawa across political lines. I am fully confident they expected the judge to rule in their favor, and they were absolutely gobsmacked when the decision went against them.
Mm-hmm. And don't forget, Lametti was the Minister of Justice at the time, and he was the one who was urging Anita Anand to bring in tanks against his own unarmed citizens to squash this peaceful protest at the nation's capital, where you would traditionally go to protest your grievances with the government, the federal government. I'm not sure if we can pull up, you can find some of the screenshots, or sorry, it was Marco Mendicino that he was in discussion with. And he said, and they say, oh, we were joking.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just put this into the.
What a knee slapper! Send in war machines to take care of those pesky freedom fighters.
Just kidding. But no. They say in this conversation, how many tanks are you asking for? I just want to ask Anita how many we've got on hand. I reckon
that's a good question.
I reckon one will do. He says with 2 exclamation points, and this is against unarmed protesters, Canadian citizens. Yeah. This is our Justice Minister, who's now, it's been determined, unconstitutionally invoked wartime legislation to squash a peaceful protest, essentially framing them as domestic terrorists.
Yeah, well,
right? And you can see the footage for yourself. It's a giant party. And don't forget, people were prevented from in-person gatherings for the better part of 2 years. We're told stay 6 feet apart. You can only gather inside with 5, and then it was 10, and then it was 5 again, and then it was only if you're vaccinated, and then it was make sure that you ostracize your unvaccinated family members and friends and never allow them into the restaurants, into the movie theaters, into any sort of social public space that's inside. And so Canadians were fed up, and they had been apart and forced isolated for so long that they just wanted to come together and have some good old-fashioned Canadian fun. And then they were framed by this government, this oppressive regime, as domestic terrorists who invoked the Emergencies Act to use unprecedented force on their own citizens. And then at the same time, you have on February 2nd here, the former Justice Minister saying to deploy just 1 tank will do.
Yeah, and you know what, Tamara Ugolini, I wonder how many other rats are going to desert this sinking ship. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Marco Mendocino. But now that David Lametti has deleted his Twitter account and he's buggered off to God knows where, all I have to say to this loser is this: tanks for the memories.
Let's show this Minister of Innovation reacting to this resignation as an MP. Actually, before we play that clip, sorry, I just want to point out too that Justice Minister Lametti has been played a pivotal role in the development and implementation of MAID. That's government-sanctioned euthanasia, medical assistance in dying. And this clip here, the Minister of Innovation doesn't even know the acronym for MAID, if you can believe it.
And his legacy after taking over from Ms. Wilson-Raybould?
Listen, everyone's serving in their own way. I think Minister Lametti served at the time where Canada were well served by having someone of his intelligence, integrity, and vision. He served in the at the time where the country went through a lot of different things: COVID, the Emergencies Act, the assistance, medical aid assistance for people who were seeking.
We call it MAID.
MAID, exactly. I was trying to find the right acronym.
Yeah, exactly.
But he served at very crucial time in Canada's history, and I was saying, I think he will be remembered as a key member of the cabinet during Prime Minister Trudeau's term, but also I think he will be remembered as a very, very significant Minister of Justice and Solicitor General for Canada. Very few of them in the history of Canada have gone to so much as he has. And so for me, he will always remain a friend. And I think Canadians should know in their heart and mind that they were served by someone who has a deep intellect, a knowledge of the law which is unparalleled, and a sense of duty to the country which is you would want to see in every elected leaders.